Rating procedure in the NFL. Hello, everybody. I'm Marky Billson, your voice of choice for a new generation of Tri-City sports fans. The name of the program, Tri-City Sports Now. On 1420 NBC Sports Radio Tri-Cities, we own the Tri-Cities with the best guests and hardest-hitting opinions in the market. Hey, on today's show, a lot of stuff that I'm going to be talking about. Yeah, you know that I've got something to say about James Harrison. A lot of stuff to say about football, as a matter of fact. The XFL might be coming back. That's been out there for a few days with some thoughts and all this that I have. ETSU will finally be getting a coach. I mean, they have, but he coaches his last game with Florida State in a bowl game, actually at 1:30. Will Jason Witten come back? What about the strength of the SEC? What's going on with the Titans and with the NFL? What ball games might you see in the NFL this weekend? And a bunch of other surprises. But I thought I would begin the show today by starting with something, Bob Nealon, head coach of the Tennessee Volunteers back when, had his 7 maxims. Most of them were rather cliched. You kind of have to go online and figure out what OSCE means. But, winning the kicking game, that's always been a big one. If you've listened to this show, you know that I, too, have what we'll call Billsonisms or maxims, sports truths, that sort of thing. And these are things that listeners of Tri-City Sports Now have probably become very familiar with me saying, maybe over and over and over again, but they are very big truths. I'm thinking of putting them on a t-shirt, as a matter of fact. And I've come up with the following, let's see here, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 Billson rules of sports. I'll rattle them off here to begin the first part of the program. And I think one of them that you always hear me say is, number one, first thing that came to mind, you can always find another tackle. This goes into where some teams in the pros or, really whatever, even in college, they will talk about, we're going to lose this tackle to free agency, blah, blah. You can always find another tackle. I know it's a very important position. It keeps your quarterback upright. Don't get me wrong, okay? It's important to run sweeps. We get this, all right? But the fact of the matter is that even if you lose a superstar tackle, there will probably be a free agent that can be had, say a veteran, to plug in at a reduced rate, and or even drafting someone. I have seen teams go south because of who they had at tackle, but they were trying it many times to play a rookie 10th round draft choice. Yeah, back in the days when there were 10th round draft choices. But someone who would be a free agent now out of a small college going up against one of the best pass rushers in the league. And when finally the team decided, you know what, that veteran guard, maybe he ought to play tackle. He'll be a little undersized, but he's got the technique. You can always find another tackle. Quarterbacks, that's a different story. I mean, just ask you this. Would it be easier for the Green Bay Packers to replace their left tackle or Aaron Rodgers? You can always find another tackle. You can't always find another Aaron Rodgers. This is a favorite phrase of mine. They'll be yelling at the visitors. This is Billson maxim number 2. Home field advantage, yes, I understand it. Statistically, it's there. The home team does win more than 50% of the time. But you also have to consider this. Look, when it was, let's say, Georgia and Tennessee, playing Neyland Stadium didn't help the Vols out any. It comes down to blocking and tackling, and last I learned, it's illegal to put landmines on the field against the other opponent. The idea that, there'll be crowd noise, they'll be yelling against you, you've got to be able to handle that. Even in high school. That if you are any sort of a professional, and maybe in high school you're not a professional. You know what, though? In high school, you know what happens? Yeah, you play the game wherever around here, but the parents travel. The band travels. Comes down to who plays better in every aspect. They'll be yelling at you. You should be able to handle that. Number 3, we talked about this with Marvin Lewis. I wanted to talk about him yesterday because of his relationships with Mike Smith and Steve Spurrier, local coaches. Judge a coach or a manager by his postseason record. Talent wins out in the regular season, but strategy is the determining factor when talent is equal. Number 4, a point guard who is your leading scorer is like a quarterback who leads your team in rushing. It's not what the position is for. You're supposed to throw the ball to teammates. You're supposed to make your teammates better. Tim Smith at ETSU used to drive me nuts. He's the all-time leading scorer at ETSU. He's a point guard. That would be like Randall Cunningham being the leading rusher all-time for the Philadelphia Eagles. It's just, Michael Vick being the all-time rusher for the Philadelphia Eagles. They seem to like their running quarterbacks in Philly, huh? I'm against franchise relocation. Who isn't? Yeah, the old sad stories about the Brooklyn Dodgers or the Baltimore Colts. But you see, firing fans isn't healthy for a sport or a community. Besides, it's never about the fans. It's always about the owners. All right? Why are the Colts in Indianapolis? Because Bob Irsay was an incompetent. And the only way he could run his franchise, they were going to take it away from him. He was so incompetent. The only way he could save it is if he moved it. It's always about incompetent ownership. It's never about the fans. 30 for 30, the Elway to Marino documentary should have relayed that to you pretty quickly. Nobody chooses a college to play for because of nosebleed seats. At one time, I think Tennessee, we have 100,000 fans. For that matter, Michigan, we have 115,000 fans. Wow, to come to the game, that's great. Wow, in my business, it's great if we have 100,000 fans going to college football games. But the problem is that if you really think that 102 and change at Neyland Stadium outweighs 85,000 with Florida, it's nosebleed seats. I could see where you'd want to play in a 100,000 seat stadium over, say, a 40,000 seat stadium. I don't see where, when it becomes 100 to 80,000, where that makes any difference whatsoever. A salary cap does not limit an athlete's earning potential. I know the idea is that, let me explain something to you. Whatever your job is, let me just use it this way. There's only so much money to pay employees. We always wish there were more. We always want to make more as employees. But if you are, let us say, a cashier, I don't know, you would be making close to minimum wage, which is what, 7 and something. Maybe you make 8 an hour. I admit that's tough to live on. That's the whole process behind the $15 an hour minimum wage. But what if we didn't stop at 15? What if we said, you know what, let's have a $100 an hour minimum wage. The inflation would be so through the roof, and also how many stores would have to shut down because they can't afford to pay their cashiers $100 an hour. Obviously, we're talking about pennies there. We're talking about $100 bills in pro sports. But even so, one cannot pay their quarterback $2 billion a year. Major League Baseball is now averaging $4 million a year in salary. I remember when Don Mattingly signed with $1.9 million early in his career, and I was like, wow, that is a lot of, now the utility infielder gets double that on average. Actually, that's a bit of a stretch, but most starters would make double that. $4 million average, the payroll is brought down by the middle reliever and the backup catcher, obviously, but, the starting shortstop, the starters are going to make double what Don Mattingly did. That being said, like I said, there becomes a limit at some point. Now, the idea of your salary is limited on a salary cap, that's absurd. An athlete on a salary cap has all sorts of opportunities to make money. Can invest in businesses that do well, stock market, savings account, Let's say he wants to go to autograph shows and sell his autograph. Let's say he wants to do endorsement, run camps, even mow lawns. Your salary isn't capped. Not by a long shot. No team chooses a nickname or a logo with the intent of offending others. Self-explanatory. Expanded playoffs water down the regular season. Also self-explanatory. Gotten into Twitter wars with other sportscasters in the market. College football should go to a 16 playoff. I do not want 7-4. I guess it'd be 8-4 teams playing for a national championship. Neither do you. You remember how special Tennessee, Florida was in the 90s? That was a playoff game. Winner of that game was 2 out of 3 years at least going to win the national championship. Loser was not. And so, the game had incredible importance. What if 16 teams made the playoffs back then? Those games aren't memorable. Alex Brown, no siree. 35-0 becoming 35-29. What was it? 63-42 or whatever it was the one year. All those things are forgotten. That's because that was a big game in the regular season. It got ratings. We have Saturday night college football on network TV. You don't have that if you expand the playoffs, because then college football becomes college basketball, and in large part, the regular season is meaningless. You know, that big game that was going to, Auburn, Georgia. Okay, Georgia's not going to go undefeated. Big deal. There's still, both of them are going to make the playoffs. What's the big SEC title game? Who cares? You're both going to make it. Alabama lost to Auburn. Who cares? There's no drama. Wisconsin's in. Penn State's in. 3 lost teams are in. Central Florida's in. There's no exclusivity. Don't expand the playoffs. Basketball teams that don't think the three-pointer first are like football teams that think field goal before touchdowns. It's the way the game is going, isn't it? It's one of the flaws of the three-point shot. I wonder if it will ever go away. I literally do, because I think you're going to see the game become, okay, pull up, shoot the long shot, hope for the big man to get the offensive rebound and the 2-point rebound, but we want 3, especially as outside shooting increases. It's just like field goals and all those. Now any kicker with his seldom. You miss a 40-yarder or something, that's something you ought to make. At one time, that was a 50-50 proposition, if that. Now, I think it's 47 is where you start missing more than you make historically. But, it's going to get that way with outside shooting and three-point shots. And at that point, do you try to work the ball inside, or do you try to have the best outside shot, killing zone defenses and so on? Football overtime rewards gutlessness, and it does. Oh, let's not go for 2. We've got overtime. That's why I loved what Army did in their bowl game. Basketball is a flawed sport in that it is the only sport that rewards a team for breaking rules, fouling. It's the only thing. You break the rules and you actually, okay, we stop the clock, the other team's on the line. Oh, they only made 1 free throw. We can make that up. If NASCAR culture needs to be changed because it is too heartland and therefore limits the fan base, does basketball culture need to be changed because it is too urban? The DH has ruined baseball. It's added pitch counts, given us the 13-7 game, the 3.5-hour game. It's put on an average length of time in both leagues. And yes, in both leagues, because it has dictated the style of play, in that relief pitching is done mid-inning rather than, can he get out of here? I really want to see him do that, because then I can pinch hit for him at the bottom of the inning. The natural progression of taking out a starting pitcher. Boy, we're down 7th inning. He's due up to hit. Yeah, let's pinch hit for him. No. We have pitch counts. He hit 95 on his pitch count. The Appalachian League guys don't go 5 innings. They're all Rich Hills. How exciting was that in the World Series? Oh, yeah, it wasn't. It's a product of the DH. It's got to go. And then in time, developing old strategies again. If the 3-on-3 is good enough for hockey overtime, why isn't it good enough for the entire game? Let's go right to the shootout. Just go right to the shootout. You don't need this. It's like playing baseball with no outfielders. 3-on-3, 4-on-4 in hoops. Less scoring means closer games. More scoring means more lopsided games. The fact the overall length of a soccer game is essentially universal, I'm talking about a 2-hour window. That's about how long it takes to play them. And highlights can be condensed into just a few plays that can be seen at any time on your iPhone or what have you, is a major factor for the growth of the sport's popularity with millennials. Soccer is going to take off. Heard that for 50 years. Now it really seems to be doing so. And finally, you hear me say this a lot, a sports franchise needs to take care of its legends. Otherwise, it loses its identity. We talked about this, the Florida Marlins, I guess Miami Marlins. Okay, that's not that big of a change of identity right there. But doing away with not only the Giancarlo Stantons, but, the Jack McKeons on the rock. All this, purging the front office, purging of anyone who did anything for the Miami Marlins over the years, because Derek Jeter is there and he's operating the team like the Kansas City A's used to be run, almost a farm team for the Yankees. And then you compare that, there's no identity with the Marlins. Compare that with the Raiders, who, yes, are going to be posting, I guess, what is it, their 15th losing season in 16 years? But so many of their front office types are former players, former legends. Art Shell had 2 stints as the coach, for crying out loud. That's the Raider way. It might not be winning, but you know what? It's not because they've kept around a Willie Brown in the front office. It is, however, giving the Raiders still that mystique that they haven't lost, even when they have lost. Tri-City Sports Now comes back after this.